I'll never get through this. And God is simply wanting to remind you today that you don't have to get through it, but I can get through it with you. But I know many of us are going through some great challenges, some great difficulty. We're in a season of life that we never saw ourselves getting into. And we look around and we're like, how am I going to get through this season? And how in the world can I make a difference in the lives of others because of the chaos and the struggle that I'm facing right now? And so, Lord, I pray for that individual who walked into this room just a few minutes ago, and they're struggling today. They're hurting. And everything's against them. And they need to be reminded that you are for them. If God... Connect class is a class, it's basically our membership class. It's 2 weeks from today, and it really lays out who we are as a church. What we're doing, where we came from, where we're headed. We've shared with you many times, we shared that we're actually part of something much larger than ourselves. We are a part of Thomas Road Baptist Church out of Lynchburg with Pastor Jonathan Falwell. We want to tell you what it means to be part of a family, a campus of churches, and how that functions and how it looks here in Danville. And also where we're headed, how you can get involved, how you can get connected. That class is taught during both of our services, 9:15 and 10:45. It takes up the whole morning. You would miss this service, but you could watch it online. We decided to do that so we don't have to take 3 or 4 weeks to do it. We'll just get the whole thing done in one day. And so if you want to be part of the Connect class, sign up at the Connect Center after church today, and you can be part of that as well. And I want to make sure it's there in your worship program, but I want to make sure it's on your calendar and you don't miss it. It's Engage Danville. You're going to be hearing a lot about that in the days and weeks to come. June 7, 8, 9, and 10. It's a 4-day period. Something that we began about a year and a half ago where we asked several churches in our community to come together. It is a partnership of churches. We work with about 15 to 18 churches in our community where over a 4-day period, we will do about 100 service projects for our city because we love our city. And we give back, no strings attached. And we want you to be part of that. On the Saturday, June 9th, all of our churches are coming together, and we've asked GW for specific projects that we can do to help a school, and they've given us about 30 different things that we can do that they don't have the time, they don't have the people, and they don't have the resources to do. So we asked our community, give it to our churches, and we will take care of it. And then we're going to do a big community festival on June 10th from 2 to 6. And the festival will take place at GW. So we want you to be part of that and impacting our community. But you'll see in your worship program that 8 days from today, there's a special training that I will be at that I want you to join me. It's at Mount Hermon. And here's what we're going to do. Those 4 days, we're going to be serving our community. And it's one thing to just serve our community. But sometimes in the middle of serving, we forget some other things that they might need. And so we serve, but we don't know how to share Jesus with them while we're serving them. And so we're going to walk through some specific ways of how we can share the gospel, how we can share Jesus with people in the middle of serving our community. So I would love for you to be there with me. It's never a bad thing to learn how to share your faith in whatever environment you're in. So I hope you can be with me on that night at 7 o'clock. It's 1 hour, 45 minutes, 60 minutes, Mount Hermon, and we'll have a great time. Hey, take out your worship program as we continue our series called MISFITS. I love this series. I love this idea. Started it last week. It's a 4-week series. Just to bring you up to speed, we're taking a look at 4 people who were misfits. And here's what that simply means. They did not fit in with their culture. They did not fit in with their surroundings. And we're taking a look at how God can take someone who is different and turn them into a difference maker. How do you go from being different to a difference maker? I don't fit in with my surroundings. I don't fit in with my culture. Last week, we talked about a guy named John the Baptist. And if he was here, here's what he would say. He would say, what's on the outside may make me different, but what's on the inside makes me a difference maker. The outside, I don't look like you. I don't live like you. I don't talk like you. I don't do what you do. But what's on the inside, my heart, my attitude, my humility, is what makes me a difference maker. This series is founded on two passages of Scripture. One is Romans 12:2, which is one of my favorite verses in Scripture, which says, do not copy the behavior and the pattern of this world. This world has a system in which it functions. This world has a system in which it thinks, in which it acts, in which it behaves. Those of you who are students, your classmates have a way in which they talk, in which they treat friends, so-called, in a way in which they treat their parents, in a way in which they treat God. And God is saying, if you're a student, don't copy what everybody else is doing. You don't have to copy the behavior and their pattern. You don't have to copy what the marriage couple across the street is doing if they're not honoring God, if they're not forgiving, if they're not loving, if they're not caring, if they're not serving. You don't have to do what the person in the cubicle beside you is doing. In fact, God says, when you choose to not copy that, that's when I want to use you, and that's when you understand my plans for your life. When you don't copy how the world does it, that's when you know why you're here. It's also founded on 1 Corinthians chapter 1. In 1 Corinthians chapter 1, it says this. It says, remember, dear brothers and sisters, that few of you were wise in the world's eyes or powerful or wealthy when God called you. Instead, God chose the things that the world considers foolish in order to shame those that they think are wise. He chose the things that are powerless to shame those that are powerful. As a result, no one can ever boast in the presence of God. If you want to boast, boast only about the Lord. God says, I don't take the wise, the powerful, and the wealthy. Because if I did, when people saw my work on display, they would give you credit and not me credit. And God says, I take the foolish, the powerless, and the poor, because that way, when I do something great, people have one response. Look at God. Look at God. And that is our prayer, is that when people see you, they say, wow, look how great God is. Hey, turn to someone beside you. Just turn to someone and say, hey, what are the chances? What are the chances? Turn to 14 people. Not 14 people. Turn to 2 people. Turn to 2 people. What are the chances? Hey, do you remember? Isn't this exciting? I can't wait to start the message off this way. Do you remember when all your hopes and dreams were dashed? Just crushed, just killed. Hey, thanks for coming to Dan River Church today. I'm going to kill your dreams, kill your hopes. I remember when I was in 1st grade, I went over to a friend's house. Our family did. They were friends of my parents. And they had an in-ground pool. And I thought that was the coolest thing I'd ever seen in my life. I thought they were loaded. They must have been millionaires is what I thought. And I asked my dad, I said, Dad, what are the chances we could ever have an in-ground pool like that? And my dad looked at me and said, son, slim to none. Slim to none. I remember I was in 2nd or 3rd grade, and I was playing t-ball, and I thought I was the best t-ball player that God had ever created. I was the pitcher. I was the first baseman. I was batting. I had my stance. I was batting just like Dale Murphy of the Atlanta Braves, for those of you who are 1980 Atlanta Braves fans. And I batted like 800. I got a hit 8 out of 10 times. I looked at my dad, and I said, Dad, what are the chances I could ever be a pro baseball player? You're laughing before I even give you the punchline. He said, son, slim to none. At 6th grade, I looked across the classroom and I saw Kelly Whitley. She made my teeth sweat. I looked at my best friend, Chad. I said, Chad, what are the chances Kelly would ever like me? He said, Scott, slim to none. She only likes cool guys. I'm like, 8th grade, I was star point guard of LCA, Liberty Christian Academy junior high basketball team. I averaged 6.2 points a game. I was awesome. I looked at my dad and I said, Dad, what are the chances I could ever play in the NBA? After he picked himself up off the floor, he looked at me and said, slim to none. My dad had a way of crushing my hopes and my dreams. I remember I was a sophomore in high school. One of my first jobs, I worked at Billy Joe's Ice Cream Parlor. I was the dishwasher. It's what I did. I would go and pick up the dishes off the table. I'd put them in the cart. I'd run them through the Hobart machine. And that's all I did for 4 hours a night. And if I wasn't doing that, I was cleaning the bathrooms. I was the janitor cleaning up people's mess who ate too much ice cream. They were lactose intolerant eating ice cream. I looked at the boss and I said, "Hey, boss, what are the chances I could ever be a waiter?" And the boss looked at me and said, "Scott, you ain't all that good with people. Slim to none." My hopes and my dreams were just crushed and dashed, slim to none. I remember about 20 years ago, there was a movie that came out, and the guy asked this girl, he said, "What are the chances you would ever go out on a date with me?" And the girl looked at him and said, "About a 1 in a million." And he looked at her and he said, "So you're saying there's a chance?" What are the chances? Many of you are going through something so horrible, so bad, so difficult, that you think the chances of you being a difference maker are never going to happen. Perhaps God has you right where He has you to remind you He loves you and He believes in you. When everybody else is against you, He is for you. He died for you. He bought you. He paid for your price. He paid the penalty for your sin because He believes in you. And we look at the odds that are against us and we miss the one who is reigning over us. This is a story today of what are the chances. This is a story today of a young lady that had nothing going for her. And God said, "You, young lady, are not just going to save a nation. You're going to change a culture." Look what it says in Esther chapter 2. In Esther chapter 2, starting in verse 5, it says this: "At that time there was a Jewish man in the fortress of Susa, whose name was Mordecai." Say Mordecai. His family had been among those who had been exiled from Jerusalem to Babylon by King Nebuchadnezzar. This man had a very beautiful and lovely young cousin, Hadassah, who was also called Esther. When her father and mother died, Mordecai adopted her into his own family and raised her as his own daughter. Let's set the scene. God's people, Israel, they were living in grim and dark days because of their own sin. They chose once again to turn their back on God. God's people turned their back on God. So God allowed them to be conquered by other kingdoms, other nations. King Nebuchadnezzar of Babylon was the first one to conquer and take over and kidnap and control the nation of God's people. Nebuchadnezzar was now dead and King Xerxes has taken over. So you've got Mordecai and Esther, two cousins, whose family had turned their back on God. They were captured. They were conquered. They were living under the reign of a foreign king who did not honor God. And to top it all off, Esther was an orphan. She had no mom and she had no dad. Esther could have easily given the same excuse that many of us give God today for why we'll never be a difference maker. And here's the misfit excuse: my chances are slim. My chances, if you want to go ahead and add, my chances are slim to none. If you knew where I came from, if you knew my family, if you knew the choices, I've been conquered, I've been defeated, I'm under the rule of a foreign king, culture, society, surroundings, who do not lift high the name of God, and I'm an orphan. Now, without going into the whole story, read Esther chapter 2. One of the most powerful two-word phrases in all of Scripture. One of the most powerful two-word phrases in all of Scripture is one of the most important phrases you will ever hear, and it's called "but God." But God. but God. But God does not work how humans work, and God does not see how humans see. God does not see the odds stacked against you. God does not see everybody coming down on you. He says, I am the one who is always with you. God does not see what you see, and God does not work how you work. And so somehow through the power of God, through the sovereignty of God, the word sovereignty means God has a perfect plan for your life. So through God's sovereignty, Esther, through a series of events and meetings and discussions and competitions, Esther becomes the queen. While she becomes the queen, her cousin Mordecai finds out that there's a plot to kill the king. So Mordecai tells the plot to Esther. Esther tells it to the king. The king puts his best men on it. And his best men find out that Esther was right. There was a plot to kill me. The plot is squashed. The king is saved. The king gives Esther credit, raises her up. She's looking better in the eyes of the king. And Esther, who could have taken the credit, could have taken all of the notoriety, all of the fame, and Esther said, it wasn't me, king. It was my cousin Mordecai. Esther was quick to give credit where credit was due. So Mordecai becomes popular. Mordecai becomes to get some notoriety. He gets some recognition. This does not sit well with the number 2 most powerful man in all of the land, a guy named Haman. So Mordecai runs by a different set of rules because he helped destroy the plot to kill the king. So Haman, he tries to go throughout the town making everybody respect him, making everybody bow down to him, even though they don't have to. Look what it says in Esther chapter 3, verses 5 and 6. Esther 3, 5 and 6 says, when Haman saw that Mordecai would not bow down or show him respect, he was filled with rage. Rage. It's amazing what rage can do to a person. Look what it says in verse 6. He had learned of Mordecai's nationality, so he decided it was not enough to lay hands on Mordecai alone. Instead, he looked for a way to destroy all the Jews throughout the entire empire of Xerxes. Haman's rage, anger, Haman's jealousy of Mordecai brought out such feelings, such emotions, that it's not enough for me to just destroy you, Mordecai. I have to destroy everything and everyone you represent. One man's rage against another man caused this man to want to kill an entire race, an entire group of people. It's amazing what rage can do. And folks, listen to me. If you believe this Bible to be true according to Genesis 1:27, it does not matter your background. It does not matter your people group. It does not matter the color of your skin. It doesn't matter your nationality, your economics, your education, your gender. All people matter to God. So here's what you need to write down. One life matters. One life matters. Now, on the flip side of that, of one life mattering, as you see throughout Esther, not just every life matters, but here's the deal. One life can change a culture. One life can save a nation. So here's the tension. Haman's angry. Haman's filled with rage. So he wants to destroy all the Jewish people. So Haman goes to the king and says, hey, king, there is a race, there is a group of people who does not live the way everybody else lives. Is it okay if I destroy them? Simple request. And the king says, hey, listen, if they're not living up to the standard of our people, then go ahead and destroy them. Now, Haman never tells the king it's the Jewish people that we've conquered and that work for us. He never told them that. And here's where the story really is the major part of Esther. Haman did not know that Esther, the queen, was Jewish. It was a secret. It was hidden. She never revealed it. And that's where the tension of the story comes into play. And so what happens is, Haman begins to put together a 1-year strategy to exterminate all the Jewish people. And the closer he gets to the deadline, the Jewish people find out Haman's plan. And that's where we pick up in Esther chapter 4, starting in verse 3. In Esther 4, starting in verse 3, it says, "As news of the king's decree reached all the provinces, there was great mourning among the Jews. They fasted, they wept, they wailed, and many people lay in burlap and ashes. Then Esther sent for Hathach, who had been appointed as her attendant. She ordered him to go to Mordecai and find out what was troubling him. Mordecai told him the story. He asked Hathach to show the decree to Esther and explain the situation to her. He also asked Hathach to direct her to go to the king to beg for mercy and plead for her people. Then Esther told Hathach to go back and relay this message." So they play a back and forth of messages. So here's the message Esther sent. "All the king's officials and even the people in the provinces know that anyone who appears before the king in his inner court without being invited is doomed to die unless the king holds out his gold scepter. And the king has not called for me to come to him in 30 days. No one can enter the king's room, the king's presence, without the king summoning them. And if you do, the king can have you killed on the spot unless he accepts you. And the king has not asked for Esther for 30 days. So this is life-risking decision Esther has to make. So look what it says next. It says, "So Hathach gave Esther's message to Mordecai. Mordecai sent this reply, 'Don't think for a moment that because you are in the palace, you will escape all the Jews being killed. If you keep quiet at a time like this, deliverance and relief for the Jews will arise from some other place. But you and your relatives will die. Who knows, Esther, if perhaps you were made for queen for such a time as this?' Then Esther sent this reply back, 'Go and gather together all the Jews of Susa and fast for me. Do not eat or drink for 3 days, night or day. My maids and I will do the same. And then, though it is against the law, I will go to see the king.' And here's the statement that I'm not sure I could say. I'm not sure I could say it. So she's telling him, 'Mordecai, you've won me over. I may live, but if I live and all of my people die, what have I really accomplished?' And here it is. If I must die, I must die. I'm not sure I would have that courage. I'm not sure I would be able to take that risk." And so it says, so Mordecai went away and did everything as Esther had ordered him. Now you know the story. Esther goes to the king. The king welcomes her. And it's a powerful story. So let me give you 4 lessons from a misfit. How do you change the culture around you when you don't fit in? Number 1, never call serving others a little thing. Never call serving others a little thing. Mordecai took in Esther, his cousin, and he adopted her as his own daughter. Mordecai did not have a requirement to do this. Mordecai was not her grandfather, didn't have to take her in. Mordecai was not her uncle, did not have to take her in. Mordecai said, "You're my family, so I will take you in." Your family. It doesn't matter. I don't care about all the other stuff. You belong to me. We're in this together. And Mordecai began to serve her and treat her as his own kid, his own daughter. He loved her, cared for her. He invested into her. He taught her. He trained her. He gave her wisdom on how to handle situations for life. And Mordecai never saw this as a small thing. Because they were family, he saw it as a God thing. And listen to me, church, it's never a small thing when it's a God thing. It's never a small thing when it's a God thing. The reason some of us in this room have some challenges in serving in the church is because we see certain things in the church as a small thing, as a little thing, as a meaningless thing, as a not my job thing. Someone else will do it. There were people when I pulled on property this morning at 7:30 that you'll never see. And they were in the parking lot picking up all of Dairy Queen's trash from last night so you wouldn't see it when you pulled on property today. Listen, we have people who serve and give without ever being seen. Why? Because they don't see it as a small thing. They see it as a God thing. There's a reason why some of us in this room should walk about 20 yards down this hallway and start serving in DRC Kids. Whether your kid is there or not, you should start serving there at least once a month. But you know why we don't? Because we see it as someone else will do it. We see it as a small thing, a little thing, and you are investing in the generation, and it's a God thing. Don't you ever see a God thing as a small thing. And that's where so many of us have a wrong perception of serving in certain areas of the church because it's small, it's meaningless, it's not important, it's not my job, someone else will do it, and it'll eventually get done. And it's never a small thing when it's a God thing. Folks, for weeks, 5, 6 weeks, we've been talking about 20 people going to Honduras the first week of June. For weeks, we've been raising money to build a house. And we've been talking to you about that. But what we've never done, we've never laid out to you the full vision of why we're going to Honduras. I shared earlier that we're part of a ministry much larger than ourselves, Thomas Road, out of Lynchburg. About 8 years ago, an international ministry called World Help came to our ministry at Thomas Road and said, we want to make a difference in one of the poorest countries of the world. And so they got partnered with an organization called Hope of Life, which is in the nation of Guatemala. And we began to do what is called village transformation. There are hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of villages in Guatemala that have nothing. Poor of poor. They have zero. They have no running water. They have huts like you see out on Main Street. They have no medicine. They have no church. They have no the things that we take for granted every single day. So 8 years ago, we began an initiative to transform villages, one small step at a time, because it's not a small thing when it's a God thing. So last October, this ministry called World Help, they came to Dan River Church, and they said, we want to take what's happening in Guatemala to Honduras, and we want you to be on the front lines. I want you to get a picture. This is a long-term project for us. This is a long-term commitment. This is not a one-summer commitment to Honduras, because we're on the front lines of transforming a village for the cause of Christ. I want you to watch this video. It's several minutes, because you got to get the full weight of what we're trying to do, because it's not a small thing when it's a God thing. And the reason we're showing you village transformation from Guatemala is because it hasn't been done in Honduras yet. When we go in June, we're the first to go with several other churches working with us. Let's watch this video together.
Tú conoces la condición en que estamos, Señor, pero solo tú lo sabes por qué estamos en la condición, Señor. Darnos fuerzas y darnos entendimiento y sabiduría para poder superar tantas crisis, Señor, en este lugar. Damos gracias por el Hijo, por el Padre y por el Espíritu Santo. Amén y amén. La gente de acá del Arco es una gente sencilla, muy humilde, trabajadora, pero en este medio se carece de todo. Una extrema pobreza, no hay iglesia en el Arco. Yo le he suplicado al Dios Todopoderoso por una iglesia digna en donde sus hijos del Señor lo adoren y lo alaben. Lo que más urgente es agua potable, vivienda digna, cosas que para nosotros es imposible, pero para Dios no hay nada imposible.
World Help believes in forming partnerships. We have a partner here in Guatemala, Hope of Life, that's doing an incredible job of reaching out to the needs of people. And then we partner with local churches in North America, and together we can do something that none of us could do separately. Total Village Transformation is changing lives from the ground up. It's going into a village and providing clean water It's providing an education system, and it's meeting both the physical and spiritual needs of that village.
¿Cómo estás? ¿Cómo estás? His name is Don Carlitos.
Don Carlitos, buen día. Me llamo Cristina, soy enfermera.
¿Cómo estás?
Ya se soltaba una picazón en la piel, no sé qué será.
Ella dice que te va a ponerte una crema en la espalda para que se te ayude y se te quite el picor.
Ajá.
¿Está bien? ¿Y los ojos? ¿Cómo están los ojos?
Es que picazón que me agarra a mí.
Te pica mucho. Very
Ajá.
itchy, he can't see, very blurry. ¿Hay gente que vive con usted o vive solo?
Yo solito duermo aquí,
Solito
solo,
y con Dios.
solo Padre. Doy gracias a Dios, gracias Señor, por el nuevo día que me ha dado Padre,
Sí.
¿verdad?
I'm happy to do it for him. And, you know, the other thing I can give him is prayers and blessings. Heavenly Father, thank you for blessing this wonderful man with the gift of your love.
Don Carlos, lo quiero mucho.
When you bring people to Guatemala, it is so eye-opening. We've raised money for a church and a well. We're seeing already the difference that's going to make in this village.
Damos gracias a Dios. No tenemos con qué pagarle.
You don't need to. We also are building a church in El Arco.
Local churches in America can help provide these needs at the same time of building relationships that are so essential. Guatemala is one of the poorest countries in Central America, with more than 50% of the people making the equivalent of less than $2 a day.
There was a mom that wanted to be seen, and looking at her baby, I asked if I could hold the child, and she said yes. He's just so flaccid, and he's got quite the cough. He was barely responsive, and I was truly afraid he would pass in my arms. He needed emergency care.
She came down to find us, and right away our team really sprung into action.
Ok, vente conmigo.
When you come here and you see the desperation of the people, it breaks you. And on one side, I know people are afraid to be broken, but I think we need to be sweetly broken.
Malnutrition, really severe.
Yes.
He's a year old, 12 pounds.
Acá lo que hacemos es darle, o sea, desparasitarlo.
I do believe that we have saved his life, and I believe that we are giving hope to her.
Mejor y me siento más contenta también, porque lo tengo vivo.
It's amazing to see the church there, and that church will be there forever.
Mi corazón está muy contento. Pues me he sentido muy emocionante, muy contento, gracias al Padre Todopoderoso que ha contestado nuestras peticiones. Construido un pozo para agua y hoy tienen el proyecto de una construcción de una escuela en el centro del Arco.
There are thousands of villages in Guatemala that need both spiritual and physical transformation.
It's very humbling to be the answer to the prayers of the village. The people have been praying passionately for someone to come.
We have an opportunity to be on the front lines of what God wants to do in villages just like that all throughout Honduras. And so we're partnering with other North American churches to transform a village about 4 hours outside of a major city in Honduras. And so I hope that you can be part of that. There's no small thing when it's a God thing. We are about $2,800 short of finishing off what we need to build a house when we are there. This year it's a house, next year it's a well. And so it's one step at a time. And so I'm hoping that by the time we're done this week, we will be really close to finishing off the cost of that house. When you leave today, you can stop by the display and help us with that. And anything you do will make a huge difference. Lessons from a misfit number 2. Never confuse certainty for comfort. Never confuse certainty for comfort. Esther had it easy. She had it easy. Everything was given to her. She was living in the king's palace. She was the queen. She had maids. She had attendants. She had servants. She had whatever she wanted when she wanted it, and she didn't have to do anything else to get it. We love certainty. We love knowing how things are going to happen before they ever happen. So, you ever been to a movie with someone who talks during the movie? Some of y'all are movie talkers. You ever been to someone and they ask you during the movie, hey, what's going on? What's going to happen next? Hey, is that a good guy? Is that a bad guy? Why? Because they want to know what happens before the end of the movie. And you want to tell them, I don't know. We love guarantees. There are no guarantees. I can give you one guarantee. If you eat a lot of fiber, you're going to use the restroom a lot. I can give you that guarantee. Listen, there aren't that many guarantees, but we want everything laid out. It's why when you're teenagers and you like that girl or you like that guy and you don't want to tell them why, because you don't know if they like you back. I don't know. I'm not going to tell them unless they tell me first. If they tell me first, then I'll tell them back. You want to know. And folks, some of us right now, we keep waiting and waiting and waiting and waiting to do what we know God has called us to do. And we keep waiting for God to make everything perfect, picture perfect, clear for us. And that's just not always going to happen. Esther tells him, Mordecai, I can't go to the king. If I go to the king could have me put to death, and he hasn't called for me. And Mordecai reminds Esther the same thing that he reminds us. Esther, God is looking for someone who is committed and courageous. Move beyond your certainty. Move beyond your comfort. In fact, church, listen to me. Doing nothing does not guarantee comfort. And trying to protect what's yours does not guarantee, doing nothing does not guarantee certainty. Protecting yourself does not guarantee comfort. We just say, I'm just going to sit at home. I'm just not going to do anything. I'm just going to take care of what's mine. I'm just going to protect what's mine. Listen, many of you, I told you just a few minutes ago, you have been generous. You have been giving. You have been tithing. You have been going above and beyond. And God says, that's when I open up the floodgates of heaven, not when you hoard, not when you protect, not when you think everything you have is yours, but when you're generous and you give it away. And some of us, we keep waiting for the certainties and the guarantees of life. And God says there is no guarantee. You simply have to trust. In fact, when he says in Luke, he says, take up your cross daily and follow me. You're taking up the symbol of surrender. You're taking up the symbol of sacrifice. Following Jesus is hard. Following Jesus has a cost. And he's saying, will you have faith? Will you trust? Will you believe that I love you? Will you believe that I am in charge regardless of what it looks like on earth? Will you believe that I will never leave you? And so Esther and Mordecai are telling us today, there is no such thing as a small thing when it's a God thing. Serving others is a big deal, and serving others changes lives. They're telling us today, don't wait for everything to be laid out. Don't wait for all of your man's best plans to be taken care of before you take a step of faith and a step of trust and a step of belief. And number 3, they would tell us this: never choose selfishness over serving. Never choose selfishness over serving. Esther had the opportunity. In fact, she started out. What did she say? She said, Mordecai, I can't go to the king. I can't go to him. And Mordecai responds, Esther, if you don't go, What will happen to your family, to your relatives? What will happen to God's people? And Esther finally, a light bulb goes off and she says, I may be living comfortably in the king's palace, but what's going on with my family? What's going on with my people? What's going on with my nation? What's going on with my culture? What's going on with my surroundings? I can do something about it. Esther did not say, I'm just going to sit in the king's palace and eat the king's food and let you deal with what you have to go through. She said what Mordecai said. Mordecai told Esther, Esther, your family, come into my home. And now Esther said to Mordecai, Mordecai, your family, I will go before the king. We can be selfish or we can serve. Listen, most people never realize that serving is the art of marriage. The art of marriage is serving. We start out serving. When we get married, when we say I do, oh, you're the greatest thing ever. Oh, you're wonderful. Oh, you're perfect. You ain't got no flaws. Oh, you're an angel. And then you get back from the honeymoon. And you realize, what did I get myself into? Who is this creature? Are they human? Are they natural? What are they doing? I didn't know your nickname was Satan. I didn't know your nickname was Lucifer. I didn't know. Somebody tell me. You're serving now. You're selfish. I didn't know there was a specific way to load the dishwasher. Someone needs to tell me these things. I didn't know you snore. I didn't know you had morning breath that could kill the whole neighborhood. First year of marriage, you turn over. Oh, I love you. Oh, I love you. Oh, after 10 years, she turns over. Woohoo! 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 You know, listen, you come home in your first weeks of marriage, and even if she's working, you come home, and it's like, oh, I've had a hard day. Oh, I've had such a rough day, long meetings. Oh, it didn't go well. Oh, you just sit right down here, Schnookums, and let me give you a little back rub. Oh, let me get you a cold Mountain Dew. Oh, that feels so good, sweetie. Oh, that feels so good. And after about year 6 or year 7, you come home and it's been a hard day of work and it's been difficult. And she looks at you, I don't care. Do you know what's happening here right now? And then you look up one day and you think, whoa, I married someone who's selfish. And they wake up one day and they, whoa, I married someone who's selfish. And then you think, I know we got problems. I know we got issues. And if they would just get their life right, if they would just treat me the way they're supposed to treat me, if they would just talk to me the way they're supposed to talk to me, then I would serve them. But if they don't do this, then Pastor, don't expect me to do this. If they don't hold up their end of the bargain, I have every justification to not hold up my end of the bargain. And you realize if you're married, at the core of an affair, it's nothing more than an act of selfishness. It says, I'm taking care of me instead of taking care of us. We can serve or we can be selfish. And listen to me, folks. When things go from serving to selfish, things weaken and die. But when they go from selfish to serving, things strengthen and thrive. In any relationship, in your business, for those of you who work or those of you who are the boss, when your customer knows you really do value them above yourself, when you treat the customer as if they are actually your customer and you don't come off to your customer that I'm better than you, that I know more than you, your business will thrive. Your business will be strengthened. When your home is a home that says, how can I serve you? Your home strengthens and thrives. When a people come to church and say, how can I serve? A church will be strengthened and thrive. But when people come into a church, they'll go up to a stranger. Hey, I know this is your first Sunday here, but you're sitting in my seat, so you got to move. Those of you who aren't laughing like, hey, someone was sitting in my seat today. You come in. It's 11:51. When's this pastor going to be done? He's got 9 minutes to get me out of here. Well, I'll come to church if I know who's up on stage today doing worship or who's preaching. And we give our preferences. Well, I'll come to church if I know how loud the music's going to be. I'll come to church. I'll get involved if I know what kind of songs we're going to do. You can serve, and every relationship you're involved in can be strengthened and thrive. Or you can be selfish, and everything you're involved in can begin to weaken and die. It's why we will continue to push the church to serve, especially in the next generation, with our DRC kids, with preschool, with nursery, with LP 56 and LP 712, because we need to raise up a new generation of leaders who will take over after some of us are gone. We can't make it about us. It's about the people who are coming after us. And Esther moved beyond herself and said, I can do something about my family. I can do something about my people. You can go from being different, not fitting in with your culture and your surroundings, to a difference maker when you realize the power of simply serving in the small things, because there is no small thing when it's a God thing. When you don't wait for everything to be cleared out, no certainty, but you trust and you believe and you walk by faith. And when you choose serving over selfishness. And number 4, lessons from a misfit, it's never forget that influence has an expiration date. Influence has an expiration date. Some of you are going to go shopping this afternoon to the grocery store. Some of you may go later in the week. Some of you went yesterday. And you look at what the expiration date is. What's the expiration date on this milk? How long do I have to drink it? Have you ever drank chunky milk? That's awesome, isn't it? You want